power blackout in our place, which took more than 24 hours. So I really apologize for that. So I've sent the Jupyter notebooks for chapter 7, and you'll find them attached in our group. So in this chapter, we'll learn how to write functions, and we will focus on function definition. So the first thing which I want you to note, we learn what is of this monolithic code. So monolithic code is a single block of a code that does all the work by itself. Monolithic code is a single block of a code that does all the work by itself. You have to note that this code is always very long and complex. Therefore, it has got several undesirable disadvantages. So monolithic code is a single block of a code that does all the work. Therefore, it is undesirable for several reasons. The first reason why this code is undesirable is it is difficult to write it correctly. Since it is very long and complex, as a programmer, you will normally find a very difficult time to write this code correctly. Code must be considered when writing any statement within that code. To debug, just imagine how long and complex it is. For example, you encounter an error, uh, you will find a very difficult time to find the source error. You will find very difficult, normally very difficult to debug this monolithic code. The other reason why this code is undesirable, it is difficult to extend. What does it mean by difficult to extend? All the details in the entire sequence of the code must be well understood because it can be modified. So if you want to modify this code, you have to understand uh, all the details in the entire sequence of this code. After that, we'll also learn the functions basic. You have to know the functions basic. After you have known the functions basic, that is the point now you will learn how to define these functions, and you will learn different parts of function definitions. There are two aspects to every Python function. The first thing you need to note is that there are two aspects to every Python function. The first aspect is function definition, and the second aspect is function invocation. What does it mean when I say function definition? The definition of a function contains the code that determines the function's behavior. Function definition, it is just the definition of a function that contains the code that determines the function behavior. What does it mean? For example, if you want this function to compute addition, so in the function definition, it will contain addition behavior. So a function definition is the definition of a function. It is definition of a function contains the code that determines the function's behavior. Sorry. The second thing is function invocation. A function invocation is used just within a program via a function invocation. So when I say a function invocation, after you have defined a function, you have to call this function. And what is the purpose of you calling this function? The purpose of you calling these functions is so that you can enable the body of this function to be executed. That is what we call a function invocation. Now, you have to know, what does an ordinary function definition consist of? So an ordinary function definition consists of three parts. The first part is a name part, the second part is a parameter part, and the third part is a body part. What does it mean when I say a name part? A name is just an identifier. It's just an identifier. This is you are defining what you intend this function to execute. For example, if you want this function to execute addition, you have now to start by defining it. So most Python functions have a name. The name is just an identifier. As with the variable names, the name chosen for the function should accurately portray its intended purpose or describe its functionality. For example, if the function of the functionality of that name is to portray that it will execute addition, so the function name is just portray. It is just a variable that gives an accurate function. It is, what can I say? In a layman language, uh, the name part, it gives just the definition of what a function will execute. For example, if this function is going to execute a product of two numbers, you are defining what now this function is going to execute. Now, the second part is a parameter. A parameter is normally in between a parenthesized or what I can call a bracket. Now, in that bracket, it can either be empty or you can give it an argument. If, for example, what you want a function to execute, for example, you want this function to count numbers, you can give now in between those brackets, you can give it an argument such as now counting numbers, or it can be blank. So in parameters, it can be empty, or it can have arguments. Then now the third thing is the body. The body now is you want now this function to execute. You have started the first line by now giving the definition and the parameter. After giving the definition and the parameter, in that first line, you must end it with a full colon. Then after you have ended with a full colon, you write your body. And what does the body contain? It contains now what you want your program to execute. And then after that, you will run your program and it will give the results as per the intended purpose. The first example of how now you are going to define your function and give it a body. For example, you want to make a program that it will prompt the user to enter two numbers. And after it has prompted the user to enter two numbers, it does the computation of those two numbers and gives the results. How will you do that? How will you make that such a program? The first thing you have to define your function, and the definition of your function is normally introduced by a definition function. And how are you supposed now to write this definition function? In Python programming, we normally write it in short as def. So as you can see in this example, I've written def. What does it mean? It is just a reserved word that introduces a function definition. So I'm about now to define my function. And what is my function here? My function here is prompt. My function here is prompt. I'm using an inbuilt prompt function that will prompt the user to enter two numbers so that these two numbers can be computed to give the results. So this def function, it is just a reserved word that introduces a function definition. Then I have now prompt.
Excuse me,
Prompt
Levi.
now is the name of my,
So you're
yes.
saying that prompt is the name of the function, or is it something different? And can we use something that is not inbuilt?
Yeah, we can also use something which is not inbuilt. We will encounter such examples when we go further.
Okay, so and you've said that we have to start with this word definition, right?
Yes, definition.
Okay, so is this I mean, are these functions different from the ones that we've been doing previously?
Yeah, these are different now. This is where this is a stage where now you can decide now to make your own function.
Okay.
Yes. So now when you are defining your function in Python programming, you have to start with the diff. That diff, it means now you are introducing a function definition. Then this prompt now is our function. It is the name of our function. It is the name of our function. Then those bracket is just the parameters. It's just the parameters. In between this bracket, there are some program which will require argument, and there are some other program which will just be empty. Like in this case, it is just empty. And when now you have put the brackets, you will finish it by having a full colon. You finished it by having a full colon. Then after having I've told you in each and every, as you encountered in iterations, in each and every case where you have a full colon, this, the line that follows must be intended. That is why now you see in this line that follows, I'm saying now print, please enter two numbers. I'm enabling now my program to display, uh, please enter two numbers. So I'm enabling this program now to ask the user to enter two numbers. After that, now you see I've written my name. uh, uh, I've told you that a function has got three parts: name, parameter, and the, what was it? It is name, parameters, and body. So in this one, you have seen I've introduced in that first line, it has catered for the name and parameter. And in this name and parameter, it has my function definition, it has my name function, and it has the parameter. So after that, I have to write the body, and the body is what the program is expected to execute. Now, you see here now, my body, I'll say now print, this program adds together two integers. So in this program, it will be able to add together two integers. So I'll start by prompting. Uh, I'll start by prompt. This prompt is just the name of my function, which I've defined it above. So I will call it so that my program can accept the first value, because I'm making a program which will accept two integers. So I've decided to name these two integers as value 1 and value 2. So I'll start by prompting it. At first, I'll just say prompt, and put those brackets. Then I say value 1 is equals to int input. So this means now it will accept to enter value 1. Then because I need two integers, which is value 1 and value 2, I will prompt it again for the next time. What does is the meaning of this prompt? So the prompt now is just ask the user to enter the second number. I prompted it for the first time, and I told my program value 1 is equals to int input. This means the program will only accept an integer value. When I try to put any other value, such as a float or a string, it will throw an error. Then I've prompted it for the second time. Then I've written again value is equals to int input. That means again it will accept the second value, and this second value will be only an int. Then now I'm doing the summation. That's why now I say sum is equals to value 1 plus value 2. And after it has done the summation, I'm allowing my program now to display. That's why I say now print. In Python programming, print is print is just an inbuilt function that allows now the programmer to display the execution to the screen. Anything now that a program has executed, it will be able to be displayed on the screen. So just a summary of what I've done above. You see, I want to make a program that can compute a square root. So you have to define it first. You have to define it first. So, and by defining, you start with an inbuilt function, a reserved word that just introduces a function definition. Then now you are programmed to do. You want to make maybe a program that can compute a square root. So that is what now we call our name function. Then the last thing now, it is the parameter. And in this parameter, we have an argument. It is not an empty parameter. It is the name the function uses for the value provided by the client. So I've told you it can have an argument or it can lack an argument. So in this part, we have got name, definition, we have got name, we have got function definition, and then we have got the parameter. And then now we have the body. You see, all this part is the body. This is what now you want your program to execute. So it is just the same case here. This def, it is just the function definition. Then prompt, it is the name of the function. Then where we have this empty bracket is just the parameter. And then where I've written from start of the program, this is now the body of this program. So when I run this example and I enter two numbers such as 65 and 90, it will just compute and give me the results that 65 and 90 is equals to 155. What if now I say 65.0? 65.0 is a float, and since in this program I've made it in such a way that it will only accept integer value. So when I will enter, it will throw an error. When I will enter, it will throw an error. So this means that this program will only accept integer value. Since I've said, you saw in value 1, I said value prompt. After I prompted my program, I say value 1 is equals to int input. So that means that it will only accept an integer input, and it will never accept an input which is not an int. It will never accept an input which is not an int. Example 2. Example 2, now I'm going to show you different ways. You saw in our chapter 5 where we were able to use iteration, and now after we used this iteration, we were able to count at different ranges of number. Now the difference between now chapter 5 and this chapter 7, in this chapter 7, we can still count the same range of numbers, but now here we can do it more than once, and we can do it for different ranges. For example, now here, you recall in chapter 5 under iteration, for example, when you want to count a range of numbers from 1 to 10, you will say for I, or for anything, it should not only be I. You can decide it can be maybe for R in range, for example. So in my case, I've just used I as my range. So I've said for I in range 1 to 11. And if you can recall in our chapter 5, when I say 1 to 11, this means this program is going to count 1 to 10. Then you finish it with a full colon. And I've told you time and again, anything Python programming, when you finish it with a full colon, it means the second line that follows the first line is intended. The second line that follows the first line is intended. And how will you know that the second line that follows the first line is intended? After you have written this first line, you just come and put your cursor here. And to when you will press enter, you will see where your cursor will appear at the second line. That is where now you will write print I. That is where you will write print I. So it is just as easy as that to know where the indentation is. You see where now my cursor is peeping. That is where I will come and say print I. That way, it is as easy as that to know where you must indent it. It is not a matter of you maybe cramming it or what have you. It is as easy as that. When I'll say print I, you can now see it will print for me numbers starting from 1 to 10. In this case, you have seen it can only print it once. It can only print it once. What if now you want this program to print from 1 to 10, 3, 4, 5 times, or even 100 times? This is where now you will apply function definition. How will you now apply function definition? We are going now to see it in chapter 3. And now, Ruth, this is the question which you asked when you are starting. This is where now you can define using your own words. For example, in my case, I've said now diff. I want now this to make a program which can count from 1 to 10. And in my case, I've said now diff count to 10. How can you call it in your case, Ruth, so that we can change it and you see it will still count?
How can I call the
Yeah, in my case, I want to count from 1 to 10. And now I've started my definition by saying diff, isn't it? Then my function name, I've called it count to 10. So I want you to call it differently, and it will just do the same thing.
Count to 10. How can we call it? I don't have any word. Do we have specific words that we have to use?
No, we don't have specific word. This is where you define your own function. You have been given freedom. You can even use your name. You can say Ruth.
Okay.
You can say Ruth that way. And whenever you see Ruth, you just know that it is counting from 1 to 10. Now, after you say diff, that means now you are defining, and your function name is Ruth. You just say diff, then Ruth, then you end it with a full colon. So when you have ended it with a full colon, it means now the second line that follows is an it must be intended. So how will you know the intended? I want you to get it very clear. You just come and put here your cursor, and then you press enter, and you just write for I, for example, and I've told you it must not be I. You can even say for R in range. Then you enter now the range which you want to count. You want to count from 1 to 10. You just say 1 to 11. So after you have entered that, in iteration also, you have to finish it with a full colon. After you have finished with a full colon, you have to press enter, so that it can do what? It can be intended and say print I, print R. In this case, we have used R. We say print R this way. And we can remove all these things that it was initially there this way. Yeah, you just say print R. Now, you have defined your function to be Ruth. So where we have count to 10, you just come and replace it with Ruth. You can just come and replace it with Ruth. So it will count from 1 to 10 for the first time. When you want it now to count 1 to 10 again for the second time, I've written there Ruth, just come here again, because our function name was Ruth. This is what it will count. Just come here and write Ruth again. So it will count for the second time. When you want it to count for the third time, you can say, you can just write in word and say count for the third time. Count for the third time. This way, third time, and you can put it that way, and you just come and say Roth this way, because now our function name is Roth. It will count for the third time. So when I will run, it will count for the first time, it will repeat counting again for the second time, and it will count for the third time. So you see, when I run, you see it has counted 1 to 10 3 times. It has counted for the first time where I had written going to count to 10. It has counted again for the second time where I've written going to count to 10 again. And it has counted from 1 to 10 where I've written count for the third time. So when you use function definition, you can count up to infinite number of times that you want your program to count. But in chapter 5, where we just use for I in range 1 to 11, it can only count once. But in this case, if you want it to count more than once, now you use function definition. And in this case, our function is Roth. So we have defined our function, which is Roth, and it has been able to count it 3 times. Now, as I've told you, when you use function definition, in that case, we have used function definition, and our function has been Roth. And you have seen now, it has counted a range of 1 to 10 3 times. And I told you earlier, when you use this function definition, it can count the same range more than once, or it can count now a different range more than once. Now, in this case, now we want the same program now to count now different ranges. I want it for the first time, either it counts from 1 to 10. For the second time, it counts from 1 to 5. For the third time, 1 to 7. Yeah, so I want now to make this program as dynamic as possible. So how am I able to do that? You saw I defined our function was Roth. So I'll just come here and say diff Roth. So I want to use the same Roth, and I say diff Roth maybe to n. Diff Roth to n. So when I say diff Roth to n, it will allow, or just, let me just use the same Roth this way so that you cannot confuse. So now I'm defining now my function, and in this case, my function is Roth. Now I'm giving this program a freedom to count in different ranges. At first, I told you that the parameter can be empty, or it can have some argument. So in this case, because I wanted to count different ranges, you saw in the first case, in this bracket, it was just empty. But in this case, because I wanted to count different ranges, I won't leave this bracket empty, because I wanted to count n times. It can be up to infinite. So in this bracket, I'll come and put here n. Now, after putting there n, I've told you how to know the indentation. You just put your cursor after the full colon and press enter. Where now we have this cursor peeping, that is where now you will start now writing your iteration. So this one, it has already been intended. So I'll say for I in range, and I want it to start counting. And where should it start counting?
Excuse me.
Yes. Yes.
Why are you using that I? Does it refer to the 1 and n plus 1 in there, or what is I? Because I was reading this in the notes, in the whatever that you're supposed to complete, and I didn't really understand what I is. I'm sorry for the noise.
Okay, there's no problem, Ruth. the important thing is understanding. As I've told you earlier, this I is just a variable that stands for your range. It is just like algebra. It should not always be I. You can choose any vowel or any consonant from A to Z. So for example, in
Okay.
mathematics, we are used to say X, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Okay.
means a variable. It just means a variable. And that is why you saw in this first case, it was also, I had written for I in range, but I changed it to R. It can be
Okay.
anything. So in this case, even I can decide we say S. Let us go with S. It can be anything, any variable from A to Z. So I can
Got
say
it.
for S in range, isn't it?
Yeah, got it.
Now, in the first case, we wanted to count from 1 to 10, and I told you, you will put 1 to 11, isn't it? Now, in this second case, I want it to be as dynamic as possible. So, and I want it to count from 1. So I'll put this 1, isn't it? Then where now I had put 11, I was specific that this program, I wanted to count now from 1 to 10. But this time around, I want it to be as dynamic as possible. I want to make this code, it can be able to count from 1 to maybe 10. It can be able to count from 1 to 30. It can be able to count from 1 to 100. How will I make it to be dynamic? So you write it in an algebraic form. And I want it to count n times. So I'll say now here n plus 1. Are you getting it? Yes. So after that, I will print. And this I've defined from S. So I'll say print S. I'll say now print S. It will not be I, because now I've defined my range is S. Now after that, I will be able now to count. I will be able to count because I've defined my function. After I've defined my function here, I've called my function Ruth. So I will want now it to count the first 10 times. I'll say Ruth, then in bracket, I'll say, I will put 10. The second, I want it to count the first 5 numbers. I'll just come here and put Ruth, and it will count the first 5 numbers. Then for the third time, I want it to count the first 7 numbers. I'll just say Ruth, and I put in bracket 7. When I'll run, you see it will count for me. The first range, it has counted for me 1 to 10. The second range, it has counted for me 1 to 5. And the third range, it has counted for me 1 to 7. You see now this program is as dynamic as possible. In the first one, it was only able to count from 1 to 10. But in this one, it is counting different now ranges. It is counting different ranges. For example, now I want it to count up to 15. I'll just come here and put 15. And in the second one, I want it to count maybe up to 8. I'll just come here and put 8. And in the third one, I want it to count up to 10. I just put 10. So when I run, you see the first one, it has counted from 1 to 15. The second one, it has counted from 1 to 8. And the third one, it has counted from 1 to 10. So when you are using function definition, it can be able to count a similar range, or it can be able to count a different range as compared only when you are using looping or iterations.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you use subtraction like n minus 1 if you want to shorten the numbers? Will that work?
No, that one will not work, because now you'll be giving, you know that, for example, when you want to count from 1 to 10, isn't it?
Yes.
You will give you will give your program 1 to 11, isn't it?
Yes.
It means you have added 1, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so for example, when you want to count now different ranges starting from 1, it means now you will put here 1, and maybe you want to count up to 100, isn't it?
Yes.
So it means you will take this 100 plus 1, which is 101, isn't it? Now, when you want to make your program as dynamic, it means that 100, it stands for n. So it means now you'll put here 1, then n plus 1. Are you getting it?
Okay, I get you.
Yeah, you can't put subtraction. You'll be feeding now your command with the other things. Now, the other thing, in this example 5, we are going still to define the prompt function. But in this case, I'm going now to define the prompt function in together with another function known as the return function. And when we will be using the return function, you will realize now, in this case, we will not now use the int or input function. We will not use now the int or input function on the body part. Now, I want you to get the difference between this example 5 and example 1. In example 1, let me go to example 1. In this example 1, you saw that I started by defining my function, and my function here was prompt. And the parameters add empty argument. That means there were no argument inside the parentheses. After that, I defined now my body. After that, I wrote the code for my body, which means now what I want the program to execute. In this one, I said prompt. Then after prompt, I entered value 1, and this value 1, I say int input. Then I prompted it again and say value 2, and I said int input. Then I did the summation and I displayed. Now the difference between this one, that example 1 and example 5, in this example 5, I'll just write the same. I will define my function, and here my function is prompt. Then I put those 2 brackets, and I've told you time and again, after you have done definition, it must end with a full colon. And now the line which will follow, it must be indented. Now, in this case, I want to make a program which will accept 2 values. And now I'll say value is equals to integer, then I will input. So those values must only be integers. It must only be integers. So when I will enter any other number, when I will enter any other form, for example, in float or in string, it will throw an error. Now, what I want you to note, in our first example, there was no return. There was no return function. But in this one, there is return. And we normally say that Python is a very simple language because it is an English-like language. To return in Python, it just has the same meaning as it means to in English. To return now, this means now after you have entered the value which the programmer might have decided to enter, it will return that value. For example, if you have entered 8, it will return that 8. Now, that is, you see now you have defined your function. And after you have defined your function, it means now this function is going to prompt the user to enter a value. And after the user has entered the value, it will return that value. Now, you will go to the body part. To the body part, you have now to make the people know who are using this program that this program adds together 2 integers. It is a program that can be able to add together 2 integers. Now, how will it add together 2 integers? Because you realize In our first example, I started by writing prompt. Then I said value 1 is equals to int input. But in this one, because I've used the return function, I will not I will not go that way. I'll just say value 1 is equals to prompt. And the program will accept to enter the first value. Then I'll come here and say value 2 is equals to prompt. And the program will accept to enter the second value. And then the third thing, it is the summation. We just do it ordinarily. We say the summation is equals to value 1 plus value 2. And then when you want it to be displayed to the screen, you just use the print function so that it can display now the sum of value 1 and value 2. So when you return, I will want you to go and compare how I have written the codes in value 5 and value 1. The only difference in example 5 and example 1, the only difference is that in example 5, I have used the return value. And when you use the return value, it means now you won't prompt it, then write value 1 is equals to int input. You'll just say value 1 is equals to prompt. Value 2 is equals to prompt. But when you have not used the return function, you have to prompt it. You have to start by prompting it. Then you say value 1 is equals to int input. Then you prompt it again and say value 2 is equals to int input. Now, when I run, it will just give us the same results as what we got in our example 1. When I will enter 78, and then I enter 79, those are two integers. So it will accept that it will do the summation and gives me 157. What if I try by any case to enter a float number, such as 78.0? It will just throw an error because this program, this program only accept an integer value. And how will you know that this program only accept an integer value? You will know it from here. Value is equals to int. That is where now you will know the program only accept integer value. When you try to enter anything of float nature, it will not accept. That is why when I enter 78 and 79, it gives me 157. Now, in this example 6, it just does now the same thing. It just does the same thing as in example 5. But the difference here, I told you that now the parameter can be empty, or it can have an argument. You have seen in this example 5, the parameter is empty. And how will you know that this parameter is empty? You will know that the parameter is empty when you say you have defined your function name. You say, for example, the function name here is prompt. You say diff prompt. Then inside the bracket, there is no argument. Inside the bracket, there is no argument. Now that one, you will say the parameter is empty. So the difference between this example 5 and example 6, in example 6, the parameter is not empty. The parameter is not empty. How will you know that the parameter is not empty? In this example, you see now after I've defined my function, which is prompt, in the parameter, I've not left it empty. I've entered a variable such as n. I've entered a variable such as n. So when you enter this variable such as n, in Python programming, that is what we call parameter passing. When you have done parameter passing, it means now the parameter is not empty. You have passed a variable. That is what we call parameter passing, and you will see it in detail towards the end of this lesson, how you pass now the parameter. So the difference between now example 5 and example 6, in example 5, it was just an empty parameter, but in example 6, you have passed an argument. You have passed an argument, and in this case, how will you know that you have passed an argument? In between the bracket, we have a variable. In between the bracket, we have a variable. So it will just give the same results when I enter 78 and 79, it will compute and gives me 157. And when I try to enter a float, such as 78.0, it will throw an error because this program has been made for only to accept integer values, only to accept integer values. That is why when I enter 78 and I enter 79, it will compute and give me the results.
I have a question. I'm not clear about the difference between entering a parameter and also leaving it blank. What difference does it make?
Okay, you have asked a very important question. Yeah, in this first one, let me go in this first one. It just the difference which it just makes, it is just the display. It is just the display. How this one will be displayed, it is different from how the second one will be displayed. For example, when now I enter two number, you see it says this program adds together two integers, isn't it?
Yes.
Please enter an integer value. At first I entered 78. Then please enter an integer value again because it accepts two numbers. At second it enters 79. It is just the display which will change. Now in this case, where now I've entered the parameter and my parameter is n. My parameter is n. You see at first it has asked me, please enter an integer. And my integer in this case, I've called it an hash, then n. So it is just the display which will change. So you see here, it will say, please enter an integer, and it will specify that integer, hash n, which is 78. And then please enter an integer again, which is hash n, which is 79. So it is just the display which will change, but the results will just remain to be the same. So in the first one, it was just explaining when now the function definition has got no, you have not passed the parameter. But in the second one, it is just demonstrating when you have passed the parameter.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So we are going now to learn how to use these functions. We are going to learn how to use this function or application of this function. The first application of function, it is used in generating GCD. It is used in generating GCD. So that is the first application. If you can write it somewhere for the purpose of your revision, you can say it is used to generate GCD. So we are going to learn, for example, Ruth here, she's a maths teacher. We are going to learn how we can use function to generate GCD. And also I can give you an assignment after I've shown you the codes for generating GCD. You can go ahead and also research or how you can use function to generate LCM. So the first application, according to this course, it is used to generate GCD. And how is it used to generate GCD? Now, this is where now it will requires you to have building blocks or of the Python programming language starting from chapter 1. So that is why we were starting with those simple things. So why were we starting those simple things? I knew very well that when we will be going to our advanced topics, we will be applying them. So that is where here now, this is the point now where you will see we'll apply the if-else statement. We'll also apply the things such as modulus and remainders. So the first application of how the function can be used, it is in computation of a GCD. So for example, I want to compute a GCD of two numbers. I have to define what my function is going to do. And as I've told you earlier, in definition of a function in Python programming, we normally use an inbuilt function known as def. So I'll say def GCD. That means now GCD is my function name. So I want this program now to compute GCD. So I'll say def GCD. After I say def GCD, I have told you that after you have done function definition, you can pass a parameter on it or not. Now in this program, I have to pass a parameter because now the program has to know what am I finding the GCD for. So I'm finding a GCD for two numbers. So in this case, I decided to call it numerical 1 and numerical 2. That is how I decided to call it. I said now I'm finding the GCD for number 1 and number 2. Then I put here the full colon. And I told you, after you have done function definition, it must end with a full colon. Then you indent it. And I told you how to indent. After you have ended with a full colon, you have to indent. I told you for you to know where to start writing the codes for the second line, you put your cursor at the end of those full colon and press enter. So where it will start blinking, that is the exact point that you must write your second line of code. So when you are determining the GCD, you have got algorithm, where algorithm is what a programmer should follow, or the procedure which a programmer should follow. The first procedure is to determine the smaller of num1 and num2. So between the two numerical values that you have, you must determine the smaller value between that two numerical values that you have. How are you going to determine it? You will say mean. Mean, it just stands for minimum, just stands for minimum. Minimum, you say mean is equals to num1. Now, you will say that the minimum value will be equals to numerical value 1. And how will you know that it is minimum? You will know it is minimum if numerical value 1 is less than numerical value 2. So you will determine the smaller of numerical value 1 or numerical value 2 by saying mean is equals to num1 if num1 is less than num2. So if num1 is not less than num2, you will use now else. So that is why you see I'm writing mean is equals to num1 if num1 is less than num2, else num2. That means that num1 can only be the minimum value if it is less than num2. But if it is not less than num2, it means it is not the minimum value. Then the second thing, you will look for the common factor of all units. And as we know mathematically, when you are finding the GCD, the common factor for any number, for example, you are finding the GCD of 37 and 38. The common factor between 37 and 38 is always 1. So that is what we call the largest factor. So you will say now the largest factor is 1. The other part of this line, you write now the range. Now, you want to allow now your program, you want to give your program now the free. So that is why you see I'm saying for I in range. So it should start computing the GCD from 1. It should start computing the GCD from 1. So you'll say for I in range 1, then me the smallest number. Yes? Yes. So you say for I, then it should start from the minimum, go up to maximum possible number. So you get full colon. Then now, after that, you give it a condition, and num1. You see this percentage sign. You see this percentage sign now. You can recall this percentage sign in our first class. It means is
Modular.
the remainder of I. And you know I, it is the range of numbers. So you say if num1 is the remainder, we said modulus computes the remainder. You say now if num1 is the remainder of I, it is now the range of numbers from 1 up to infinite value. Is the remainder of I is equals to 0, and num2 is the remainder of I is equals to 0. What should the program compute?
You say that, excuse me. Do we
Yes.
say that if num1 is equal to remainder I, or we say that if num1 divided by I, the remainder is 0?
Pardon?
I'm interpreting these modulars as of course, it's giving us the remainder, which is 0, but I'm interpreting it as a division, kind of, to maybe understand it.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
should
it's
we
actually a
say,
division. It's
yeah,
like,
a division that is giving us the remainder, right?
yeah, that
Yeah,
gives the
that's
remainder.
giving us the remainder.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we should say that num1 divided by I, the remainder is 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say even that way. That will be easier. So you can say if num1 divided by I, the remainder is 0, and num2 divided by I, the remainder is 0. What should the program compute? It should compute now the largest factor. And this largest factor, you set it is equals to I. Are you getting it? So this largest factor, why am I setting it is equals to I? Because now I'm making this program to compute the GCD in a certain range, and this range is in I. Then I will tell it now return the largest factor. When I will tell it return the largest factor, it will now compute the GCD. It will now compute the GCD. Now, after I've written that program, I gave it some example. I want it, for example, to print the GCD of 36 and 24. And also I gave it a variable such as x is equals to 18. Let me uncomment it. I gave it a variable such as x is equals to 18. And then I wanted it to compute the GCD of an expression such as x minus 2 and 24. And then for the other example, I wanted it to compute the GCD of x minus 2 and the GCD of 10 and 8. So I've given it x is equals to 18. So x minus 2 here will be 16, and x also minus 2 here will be 16. So when I run this program, it will give me the GCD of 36 and 24 is 12. Then the GCD of an expression x minus 2 and 24 is equals to 8. Then it will give me the GCD of the GCD of x minus 2, and the GCD of 10 and 8 is equals to 2. So after you have, this means all this program is just for computation of a GCD. So you can decide to write it inside here, your examples, or you can decide to remove all these examples and you write it outside now, the way I've written below there. So after I ran this one, I want it now to compute the GCD of 96 and 72. When I will run, it will give me 24. I want it again to compute the GCD of 34 and 67. When I run, it gave me 1. And now, for example, I want it now to compute the GCD of an expression 96 minus x and 72.
Let me take you back a little bit.
Yes.
Can you please maybe delete this 96 and 72 and write them again so we can see how you write them in there?
Okay, I can delete them. So for example, now I want to write now the GCD. I'll just come here and say I can decide to use print or not. For example, if I use, I don't use print, I just come here and say the GCD of 96 and 72. And 72. When I run, it gives me the output is 24. And I can decide now to include print. I can decide to include print this way. This way, it will give me, it is 24. So, and also I want to find the GCD of 34 and 67. I just come here and write GCD of 34 and 67, GCD of 34 and 67, I think, yeah, 34 and 67. When I'll run, it will give me 1. And then, for example, I come here and assign a variable x. I assign it 76. And then I say the GCD of, I say GCD of 96 minus x and then 72. So it can do the GCD, that expression. When I run it, you see it has given me the GCD is 4. So this program is just for computing the GCD. And you have seen after we have given it example, it has computed the GCD. It has computed the GCD. So
I'm sorry
that
to
is
ask this. What exactly is GCD?
GCD in mathematics is the greatest common divisor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Then now, the other thing which we are going to cover before we call it a day, it is the main function. And what is the purpose of the main function? The main function just helps the programmer to organize our code. So when you want to organize your code, you just use the main function. So the main function, it just helps the programmer to organize the code. It is common for Python programmers to use this function named main to all statements that to this point we have not placed within the function. So the main function, what I want you to get it right, it just helps the programmer to organize your codes. Then the second thing about this main function, it calls the main function, which in turn directly calls several other functions. It calls the main function, which in turn directly calls several other functions. What do I mean? The first thing of the main function is to organize your codes. It calls the main function, which in turn directly calls several other functions. So among the example, the one which I want you to master is this one. This is for your certification. But in the main function, I want you just to know the definition. It is a function that helps us to organize our code. That is the first thing. The second thing is that the main function it calls the main function. It calls the main function, which in turn calls the several other functions. What do I mean? When you use the main function, there are some other things maybe the program might have ignored. So it will enable you to take into consideration any other thing that the program might have ignored. That is the layman's language. So you can see here, you can now compute the GCD. Now using it will give you the same output, but in this case now we are going. It is using the main function, and now here the main function, it will enable you to get now the integers, because you have seen the first part of this code. I've used all the codes for computing GCD. Then second part.
Let me interrupt a little bit.
Yes.
You said that when we are doing this GCD, there is an algorithm that we're supposed to follow.
Yeah, there's
right.
Yeah.
like a procedure that we're supposed to follow. So the procedure includes writing all these notes in there. It includes everything, or can we, like, there are some of these notes that we can omit?
Pardon?
Okay. Does the procedure include writing everything that you've written down here? Like, does it include compute the greatest common divisor of m and n, for example? Does it include everything that you've written there? Or can we omit some of these notes or comments?
Yeah, what I've written here is just comments. It is just comment. It directs someone who will be passing through my program what I was doing.
So what is then basically, what is the procedure then basically that we can follow to write to find the GCD?
Yeah, the procedure that we can follow. I don't want to confuse you between the two. I will prefer you always to follow this procedure in example 7. I don't want you to follow this other procedure because the other procedure, it now includes the main function.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want you, I'm just passing through it so that you can just read this. Example 8, you can just read it for your leisure. But
Okay.
what I want you to follow is what we have passed through in example 7. Now, in this example 8, this is where we'll use the main function. And as I've told you earlier, the main function is just to organize the code. So here, I don't want you to dwell a lot. What I want you to get it right, it is the definition of the main function. It will enable you now to organize your codes. And also the main function, it will take into consideration other parts of the codes of this program, which may be in example 7, the program had assumed. For example, now I can see here the difference. The first part up to where we have return largest factor, this is the code for computing GCD. The second part here, where we say diff get int, it now prompts the user to enter any integer, Now the third part is now the main part. This is the main part. This is where now it directs the user that you will only enter 2 numbers to compute the GCD, and those numbers are n1 and n2. Then after you have defined the main function, you have to end it by saying main. You have to end it by saying main, having those double empty brackets. So it will just do the same thing, but for your certification purpose, I will prefer you only to go with that simple example in example 7. Don't go with this. In this part, just know what main function does, and I've told you it just helps the programmer to organize his or her codes. So for example, if I enter here, I find the GCD of 34 and 32. You see it has given me the GCD of 34 and 32 is 2. So in this way, you have seen it is more organized. When I entered 34 and I entered 32, it just displayed for me. But in the first case, for me to get the GCD of 34 and 32, I had to write GCD this way, GCD bracket, then 34, then 32. I had to write. So in this one, it is not more organized. But in this one, I just come and I press here and I just write 34, that way, enter, then 32, that way, enter. You see, it is just organized and straightforward that way. So why is it now organized and straightforward? Because I have now included the main function. That is it. Then the last part of it is parameter passing. And I think I touched it when you were starting this lesson. In parameter passing, that is where now you enter a variable. For example, when you want to compute an increment, compute an increment of x. So you see here I've said diff increment. Then in this bracket, I've put x. That means I've done what we call parameter passing. if I could not have put that x, if I could just leave it empty that way, that means I've not entered any argument. So when you have not entered any argument, that means you have not done parameter passing. But when now you have entered an argument such as x inside the bracket, that means that is what we call parameter passing. So I'll pass that. So parameter passing is when you have entered a variable or any argument with the, within the function definition. And here in our function definition, it is increment, and I've entered x. So when I've entered this x inside those brackets, that is what we call parameter passing. So yeah, that is all that pertains to parameter passing. Then the other thing there, which I want you to get it clearly, is immutable object. So what is an immutable object? This is an object which a programmer cannot change. This is an object which a programmer cannot change its value. That is what we call immutable object. So you'll just, during your free time, you'll just go and pass through immutable object and immutability in detail so that you can see what is this immutable object. The other thing before we call it a day, and you have realized that in today's Jupyter Notebook, I've segmented it into parts. Why am I doing so? In this chapter, we have got a lot of infinite loops. So that so when you just put it in one Jupyter Notebook, it normally causes the notebook to crash. That is why now I'm separating it to avoid that. The last thing, which
So that
I
means you are
think
putting
will
them
not
in,
take more than 5 minutes.
you're putting them in separate files.
Yeah, I've put it in different notebooks. Yeah, in separate Jupyter notebooks. I think there are 4 of them. Yeah,
Oh.
so that the notebook cannot crash.
I'm still wondering why my
Let me give
IDE,
this
my
time
Jupyter
to
Notebook.
open.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Do you hear me?
Yes. Yeah,
I'm
I
still
can hear you.
Yeah, I'm still wondering why my Jupyter Notebook always has only the run button at the top. It doesn't have the one on the sides like yours. I don't know why. See the run.
Mine as well.
Yours also has it only on at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, still wonder. Was installing my, there is a time also my Jupyter Notebook was just the same as what you are saying. Mm, 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 mm. I think
You're breaking up. We can't
Yvonne,
hear.
Sir, you are breaking up. We can't get you.
can you answer
Nice.
that question? Why is it bringing the hour the sideways? is just a matter of what can I think it is just a difference in version. If you can just I don't know what might be the problem.
I think you should try to reinstall it again. Maybe it's the version that you have.
Yeah, also I was thinking the same. This maybe the version. I just think the version.
Or
Because I
maybe,
thought I had the latest version, and I tried reinstalling it. It's still the same.
okay, maybe we can deal with it tomorrow. I will help you
Okay.
through it. Or
Thank you. Thank
Thursday,
you.
yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you. So, Yvonne, I've realized that this my second Jupyter notebook is quite large and it is crashing when I'm opening. And at first it opened. I don't know why. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. I think it's just the network because you are also breaking up. So let's see if it will open.
No, the Jupyter notebook doesn't require to open
Oh,
with a
yes, yes,
network.
yes. Sorry, I have remembered.
Yeah, it doesn't require. I think, yeah, because there is something which I wanted to cover in this Jupyter notebook, but I'm realizing it is just crashing. It is not opening.
Yes, it has opened though.
No, it has not opened.
This
It
one
is
is not.
loading. Yeah, if you can observe it very well, it is loading and it
Yes,
crashes. Are you
it
seeing?
has crashed. Yes.
Yeah, it has crashed. So that is the challenge with this chapter. Some codes, when you run it for the first time, it runs. When you try to run it for the second time, it crashes. I don't know why. Yeah, so this one, it has crashed. I will have to make it again. So I can't go, but there was no there wasn't any match in that notebook, if you can recall, isn't it?
Yes. You've
Yeah,
covered almost everything.
yeah, I've covered almost everything, but yeah, I know why it is crashing. There is a certain line of code. Do you remember when I was running it, I was forcing it to interrupt?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that is the reason. I think I will just make a fresh Jupyter notebook, and in our next class, I will just pass through it and everything will be okay. Let me see if I can pass through the third one. And the third one, it will not crash because it is just a small one. Yeah, this one, it will not crash. It is not that big. Yeah, this one, it will not crash at all. Now, there is something, yeah, which I want to touch on it. It will only take around 5 minutes. So, it is just an application. It is just an application of this function definition. And in that notebook, which has not opened, the first application of which is in that notebook is when you want to make a ball rolling die. A ball rolling die. That is the first application. The second application is when you want to draw a tree. So when you want to draw a tree, you will apply function definition. So the ones which are in those Jupyter
What
notebook,
of when you want to draw a rectangle? I encountered such a question when I was doing module 1. I didn't know
when
what
you
to
want
do.
to draw,
A triangle.
yeah, that triangle, it is normally in the form of a tree. We normally
Oh,
call it a tree.
okay.
Yeah.
Rectangle as well?
There is no one for rectangle.
Okay, I'll show you if I get it over the week. I came across such a question when I was doing module 1.
Okay, you will
I'll
just
go
show
back
me.
and show you. Okay.
Okay. So what I want you in that notebook which has crashed, it doesn't have any important information for the certification. But in this one now, what I want to show you, this is relevant for the certification. So I want you to concentrate here. So another application of function definition is when you want to come up with the floating point equality. For example, you want to make a program, and in this program, you want to have an increment of 0.1. When you have 0.9 plus 0.1, it gives you 1. So you want to make a program. If it gets the value of x to be equal to 1, it prints OK. But if it gets the value of x is not equal to 1, it prints not OK. So for example, I'll use the main function, and I've told you the purpose of using the main function. It is just to organize your codes. So yeah, I'll say diff main. Then I'll set my x is equals to 0.9. Then I want it to have an increment of 0.1. So that means I'll say x plus 0.1. It just means I want it to have an increment of 0.1. So if it will get the response to be 1, it prints OK. But if it is not 1, it prints not OK. So for example, when I run this code, it got the response to be 1, and it printed for me OK. But for example, if I could have written here now an increment of 0.3, that means it will compute 0.9 plus 0.3 and gets 1.2. Now, x is not equal to 1. It will be equal to 1.2. So when I run this code, it will just say not OK. So that is another application of function definition. It is used in floating point equalities. Then the other thing, it can be used in coming with the infinite loops. It can be used in generating infinite loops. And infinite loops, I told you, these are such type of a loop which it will run forever unless you interrupt, unless you interrupt the cell execution. So in this case, I want it to count starting from 0.0. And when it will count starting from 0.0, I want it to have an increment of 0.1. So I told you, how will you be able to identify this is an infinite loop? Most infinite loops, they have while. So while it means it will just continue counting until you interrupt it. And when you are learning iteration, I told you an application of this infinite loop is used in websites. Why is it used in websites? Because a website has to run 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. So it will keep on running. So for example, here, when now you are generating an infinite loop, you will use function definition, and you will see here, when I start running this, you will just realize it will keep on running until now I come here and go to the kernel and interrupt this cell. That is when now it will stop running. Up to that case, I think you have understood now the application of function definition. This in example 8.
You can
Yes.
build a website straight from Python without going through the Django library.
Django library is within Python language.
Yeah. So do you have to switch to Django, or you can just do it straight in Python?
Now, Amos, you are contradicting. For example, let me reframe your question. You can say, do you have just to switch to square root without using math library? You know, Django is just a library in Python programming. Django is a library in Python programming for web development. They
Yeah.
Going to learn that as well?
It is. No, we'll not go that detail because we'll not go into that route because ours now is in data science. We'll only be concerned with libraries in data science because Python is a general purpose programming language. Anybody,
Oh,
for
I see.
example, in the background of web development, you can use Python. Software engineering, you can use Python. Cyber security, you can use Python. But it is the libraries which differs.
Oh, I see. So you're going to
It is
use
the
the right,
libraries,
the appropriate
libraries
library.
which differs. For example, you are a data scientist. The libraries which you will use, they are the libraries for data science.
NumPy
Like
and pandas.
NumPy and Panda.
Yeah, those are NumPy, Pandas, NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, PyTorch. Those are now in data science and AI. A person who wants to learn cybersecurity, let me show you. Let me open something here in cybersecurity. A person who wants to learn cybersecurity, there are packages for cybersecurity. What am I getting? A little bit. Yeah, so there is something here. I hope all of you have heard about ChatGPT. You just go and ask it. ChatGPT will just give you the library for cybersecurity in Python. Just type here.
Okay.
Cybersecurity in Python programming, in Python language. And it will just give you. So these are some of the package for somebody who wants to go to cybersecurity. For example, and you want to use Python, the packages here you will use Scapy, PyCryptodome, Requests, Paramico, Nmap, PyCrypto, Yara, Black at Python, Tornado, Cryptography, and Netmico. Those are now the person who wants to go cybersecurity. What about the person who wants to go to web development? You just come here and ask Python, ChatGPT, Python libraries for web development. And it will just generate for you. It will give you Django, Flask, Fast API, Pyramid, Tornado, CherryPy, WebPy, Turbo Gears, and Quote. When you want to ask it for data science and AI,
And I also wanted to ask, can you use PyCharm instead of Jupyter?
yeah, you can use it. You can use it, but it is not encouraged.
Okay.
It will
Because they're all
confuse you.
IDEs.
Yeah, they are all IDEs. In fact, PyCharm, you need to pay for the license. That is why it is not encouraged. You need to pay for the license.
Okay.
But the one which just comes free is a Jupyter Notebook and Spider.
And Spider, okay.
Yeah, but the ID for Spider, if you are used to Jupyter Notebook, it will confuse you.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, now when you ask now, these are now the libraries for data science and artificial intelligence. We have NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, Scikit-learn, TensorFlow, Keras, PyTorch, XGBoost, LightGBM, Natural Language Processing Toolkit, Spacey, OpenCV, Stats Model, and Gensim. So Python is a general purpose programming language. It just depends. After now you have grasped general programming skills. If you want to go to cybersecurity, there are libraries for cybersecurity. If you want to go to data science and AI, there are libraries for data science and AI. if you want to go to what software engineering, there are those libraries. So when now you get the general Python programming skills, for example, in my case, the libraries which I'm good, it is in data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. When you ask me about maybe some other things in cybersecurity, it might give me challenge because now I'm a Python programmer specialized in data science and AI. There is a Python programmer specialized in cybersecurity.
Okay.
Yeah. And also it can give you, sometimes I will expect all of you to have ChatGPT. Sometimes when you have a problem writing a code, for example, the way I've taught there, maybe you are trying to write a code and you are getting an error, you just feed it direct to ChatGPT and it will give you the right code.
Yeah, but I don't know. Are you yourself, do you have ChatGPT in your laptop? Because I tried downloading it in my laptop and I couldn't, but I have it in my phone.
No, you
But I
can't
want,
download you can't download ChatGPT. ChatGPT, you create an account the same way you normally create a Gmail account.
oh,
Yes, you create
I
an
didn't-
account. Yeah, and you must have, in fact, a Gmail account. For example, what you are seeing me doing on my end, this is a ChatGPT account.
okay.
Yeah,
I added it to my Excel account as an add-in.
no, you are not getting it. For example, your Gmail account, Amos, you can't
Yeah.
add it to Excel. You just create it. And when now you want to sign in, you sign in using the details which you had created, such as your email address and the password.
So we should just go to Google and create an account with it.
Yeah, you just say ChatGPT sign in.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a product from Microsoft. But now Google has given ChatGPT a run for their money. They have theirs, which is known as BARD. And for Google, it is more advanced. Even it accepts even Kiswahili terms.
Wow.
Yeah, for Google, you can give it any question in Kiswahili and it will answer.
What is it called?
It is called BARD.
BAT?
BARD.
Oh, bad. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So for Google, they incorporated Kiswahili in their chatbot. I think it is now 2 months old.
Hey, those guys are really
I
competing.
don't get it. Please
Yes.
take me slow. So you say that BARD is in ChatGPT? Is that what you mean?
No. For example, you are using a SIM card, isn't it?
Yes.
You can either decide to use the one from Safaricom or Airtel. Those are two different companies, but you can use this SIM card for communication. So this ChatGPT, it is owned by Microsoft. So the same version of it, the same competitor, because it is Microsoft who started coming with ChatGPT. Then for them to have competition, Google now came with their version of ChatGPT. But now in Google, they don't call it ChatGPT, they call it BARD.
Oh, got
Yes,
you.
to give Microsoft competition. Are you
Okay.
getting me?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, that is why now, right now, teachers, you are having a run for your money. You know, this technology can throw you out of your job. Yeah, for example, just look at my screen. You have given your student this maths exam. Just look how ChatGPT will do it. Give me any maths question, and you see how ChatGPT will do it correctly.
2x squared
2x squared. Let me write 2x squared
plus 4x
plus, let me write, plus 4x
minus 8 equal to 0.
Minus 8 equal to
Equal
0.
Ruth, is that
Okay,
a quadratic equation?
yeah, I think it's a
Yes.
quadratic, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And now look how ChatGPT will do it. And the student will come next morning, gives you very accurate results. And he or she doesn't know anything. It is ChatGPT.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it can throw teachers out of their jobs. You have seen it has done it very well.
So can Bard also do it?
Bard also can do it, and even Bard you can feed to it with the Swahili language.
Wow.
Oh my God. But this is what the students do here, but they still need us. I mean, the students are always with their phones in class, so they can do this if they want to.
Yes. So this is what now technology is doing. Although it has got some errors in some questions, but 90% it gives it correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now,
that
is it not going to pose a challenge to even data scientists and
in data science, that is where now we are safe.
really?
That is where we are safe. It can't do data analysis. It will just give you the steps of how to do it, but it can't do it.
Okay.
And some other question of integrity, it will just warn you. For example, you just look here. For example, if I ask it, how can I hack Amos' Facebook account? It will warn me. So when I feed it, it will warn me. It will tell me, I'm very sorry, but I can't assist you. So there are other things of security concern. It will just warn you.
Oh, I see. It says it's illegal and unethical.
So you have to be intelligent enough how to ask it. For example, now, if I want to get Python codes for hacking, this is how I'll ask it. Just say, I'll tell it.
Yeah, you got to use ethical hacking.
No, even if you will give it ethical hacking, it won't accept. I'll tell it this way. Give me Python codes for malware analysis. Oh, it has refused. But there is a day I asked it and it gave me. So that's when I can give you that code and I attack your account.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is it accurate?
Yes.
Is it always accurate?
Very accurate in terms, everything in programming. It's very accurate. There is a day it gave me the code and I took a sample of my Facebook account. I attacked my Facebook account and it attacked it.
What?
Yeah. So in cybersecurity, they are very sensitive. There must be a way of you asking it. But if they just realize maybe you want to misuse, they won't give you. There is somewhere where I asked it. Let me see. There's somewhere. Even some other things, for example, in AI, which I'm doing, and maybe I encounter some challenge. I normally ask ChatGPT, and it does it very correct.
And if you keep asking like those unethical questions, can they flag you?
They can't. This is the question which I asked it, and just see how it generated. Asked it very well, generated for me. As is Python libraries used in cybersecurity, and it generated very well. After I asked it that, there is something which I asked it, it failed me, but there is something here I asked it. Let me just look at it, and I'll show you. Python malware analysis. Yeah, this is how I asked it. Yeah, and you see, it generated for me. And when I used this code to attack my file, it attacked.
Wow.
Yeah, it just generated. So there is an intelligent way how you can ask it. But in data science, data science it is safe. You can ask it anything, but it will just generate. It will just generate. For example, I asked it a certain mathematical question yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Let me look for it. And it gave me.
You guys can go toe to toe with Sudanese.
Yeah, so this is the thing which I asked it. And Ruth is a maths teacher, can bear me witness if it did it correctly. I asked it to calculate something in mathematics. This is the question which I gave it. Given the data, that one, construct a frequency table of grouped data using a 4 classes where it shows the lower limit and the upper limit. That is the calculation which it did, and it was very accurate. Even it drew for me the table.
It even give you some explanations or?
Yeah, even the explanation and everything.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is how teachers now will be having a run of their money soon.
Only the one. That is how we're looking for side hustles.
Ruth, watch out.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I have to.
ChatGPT can throw you out of your
You're
jobs.
good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So when you know how to use it,
Mm.
you won't encounter any problem. When you just know how to use it, you won't encounter any problem. For example, maybe there is somewhere where you have obtained an obstacle. You just come and consult it, and it will give you pretty well. For example, when I was, there is an analysis which I was doing using SPSS, and I got stuck somewhere. I just come and asked it how to do a bivariate regression, and it just explains for you very well. It explains for you, and you go to the software and you do it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you can type any mathematical expression in there, any mathematical question.
Anything. So there is something which I was telling you. It can't displace data scientist because it can't do analysis. It just gives you step. For example, I was asking it how to do a bivariate regression. You see, it has not done for me analysis. It has just given me step. The first step, import your data. The second step, descriptive analysis. Running the third step, running the bivariate. So it can't displace data scientist.
Okay.
Yeah, it can't do the analysis. It just gives you the steps of how to do that analysis. And when you follow those steps, it does for you that you'll be able to accomplish that analysis and get the results.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering. So after this, we're going to do those things, machine learning and all those things.
Yeah. So
What's
when you're doing
interest?
in fact, when you are doing those machine learnings, it will be throwing a lot of errors. So when you throw it throws for you that error, you just copy paste all that code and you put it in this ChatGPT, and it will identify where you have gone wrong. It will identify everything. If you could have time, I could have shown you one, but I don't think if you have time. You see, even the point where it identifies an error, it tells you how you should correct that error. It gives you the comments and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is for you to know how to feed it so that it can give you the correct response. Yes. So that is it. Unless you have any other question. If you want, you will want some more class in ChatGPT. You can just schedule with me. I'll direct you how it can be helping you a lot.
Levi, tell us something. These codes that we're learning, do we have to commit them to memory?
No, you
Or
don't. You don't have to commit them to memory at all.
okay.
What you are learning here is you just to know the commands where you should intend. What you should just master is, for example, when you meet any full colon, you just know that at this point I should intend.
Okay. Okay, good.
Then the other thing is is for you to just know this basic programming. For example, now when you will be given, I realized when I was giving people the first quiz, when you have been given anything like a code, you don't just go and pick a multiple choice. You have to do it on your rough work. And what is your rough work? Your rough work is normally the Jupyter notebook. For example, Amos, I've given you a code like this. A whole code like this, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've asked you what will be the results, and I've given you the multiple choices. What I will expect you to do is not a guesswork. You will just come and write all this code in your notebook, in your blank notebook, and then run it. After you run it, that is where now you get the results. You don't go
Yeah, that's
guess.
what I do when I'm working on those modules, because that idle thing, you don't see everything in the console.
Yes. So, for example, when you'll be doing the certification, for you to be successful, I will expect you to have 2 laptops. The first laptop, yeah, 2 laptops. The first laptop,
yeah.
the first laptop is the one which you will use it to open the Python Institute website. Then
Can I
you are
use can I use a
you are,
TV and a laptop? At times I use TV and laptop. I use like YouTube and then
yes.
laptop. Yeah.
No, you must just have a laptop, because for this, in that Python Institute,
Yeah.
they have deactivated the copy pasting capability of that site. So you can't copy paste any code there. You just have to write one by one.
Wow. So I have to budget for another computer.
You have just to have, or you can borrow for the purpose of just doing certification. So the first laptop, you will just use it to open that website. And the second laptop is this one. It must have an installation of a Jupyter notebook. The first laptop, it shouldn't have installation of Python Anaconda, because you are just using it to open the website.
Oh, maybe my old laptop can do.
Yeah, in this second laptop, it is now the one, for example, the one which you are using now, it is the one which you'll use now. You will open a new blank Jupyter notebook. In case you get any question there in the certification, which requires you maybe to write a code for you to get the response, you will use this other laptop to write those codes, and you get the response. When you get the response, you go to the laptop which you have used to open the Python Institute website, and you answer your question and you go.
Oh, what I normally do, I just switch between.
Yes.
It's not like we will be so monitored that we cannot even use our notes.
No, we will monitor you. It is
we'll
just
do
your,
it.
it is
Okay.
it is your speed. It is your speed. In fact, when the time elapses, that thing just submits itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just need 2 laptops, because it is like you have given student mathematics exam. And when you have given them, you don't want them to calculate in the rough work. You just want them to guess from nowhere and give you answers. Will it be possible?
Me, I normally switch between the browser and the IDE. So I do my rough work on the IDE, and then I go to the browser to enter the answers.
Yeah, you can do that way, but during the certification, doing that way, it will waste a lot of time because there are some, I've told you in that website, when you'll be doing certification, they have deactivated copy pasting capabilities. So you have to come and write codes one by one for you to test if you have been given a coding question. But it is a mixture of coding question and theory questions, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, a theory question, you can just do it. Without rough work. You can just do it by referring to your notes, or you can have your phone. You just Google it, and you put the answers. But for the codes, you have to write it in the Jupyter Notebook.
Wow.
For you to get the answers so that you can give the responses. And why am I teaching this? For example, you have been given a code such as diff increment, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to know when you are writing it where there is indentation, where there is this. That is the thing which you must master, because all those things will just be given in those codes there. So they just want to test if this person knows where to indent. If this person, they ask you about square root, if you know that square root is being found by SQRT, those are just the basic things they test.
You see, at times I normally open two text editors on Jupyter.
Yes.
So I use one as my rough work for my rough work.
Yes.
And another one I use to do the computations, the actual ones.
Yes.
Can I do?
You can do that, but it will be confusing you. What I advise, you just have two laptops. The one is just to display the screen of for the certification exam, and this one is to do all rough work pertaining your work.
Wow.
Yeah, it will be faster that way, because
that exam. I have a second laptop.
Yeah, because that exam is timed 40 minutes. So when you use one laptop opening two windows, it will just consume your time, because in a question you must spend less than a minute, the maximum of 1 minute. There are 30 questions.
Because I can see you also have two editors here, and you can just click a button and you switch between them. I see you have two editors open.
Yeah, you can just you can just click, but
it takes time.
It will take time. There also you are running with time. You don't have that freedom, or you don't control that time. They are the ones who are controlling the time.
I see.
Yeah, and they just see, maybe after that 40 minutes you have not finished. Maybe and the results normally comes instant. After you have just finished, the results comes instant.
Okay.
And maybe it gets you, maybe you have not reached the pass mark. Maybe you have got 69 or 68, because their pass mark is 70. So it is just advisable for you to be fast enough, have two laptops.
Okay.
What did you say? You said something on the second laptop? I didn't get it clearly. If you can clarify that.
Yeah, the second laptop is will just be used for your rough work. It is the one which you are using now. This second laptop it must have the Anaconda installation. But for the first laptop, it should not have anything. That one is just for opening that website.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Because I realized in the first quiz, when I was giving people a quiz in a code, they were like just guessing. when you are given anything in a code, you have to write it in the Jupyter notebook and make sure it has run. If it has given you an error, it means now among the multiple choice which you will select, it will be a multiple choice portraying an error.
So the test, you're going to do it on Jupyter notebook.
Yeah, the rough work you're gonna do on Jupyter notebook, but the test they will just give you there, and they will give you the multiple choice. So when you have done your rough work and maybe you have gotten an answer such as 2, you go there and pick 2.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we able to copy paste on the
No,
exam?
they have deactivated those copy pasting capabilities. So you have just to write. If it is a code, you have just to write a line by a line.
So then that means that we'll be right. Maybe you read a question from your first laptop and you type it in the second one for you to run it to get the answer, right?
Yes.
But that one will take time as well.
So that is why you need to practice on typing very fast. And maybe where a code has why I'm teaching this is for you now to know if you meet maybe a double colon, you just know automatically that is why I'm supposed to indent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you go, you
So-
type very fast.
So this is going to be different from the quizzes, because I see the quizzes you can copy and paste.
No,
And
in
those are
that
the
one, you
tests.
can't. Yeah,
And the tests
that,
also you can copy and paste.
in
But
in that certification, you can't copy and paste. You can't. They have deactivated.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe if they have changed starting this year, because in that website that I have seen they have added a lot of things. But when I was doing mine, they deactivated those copy pasting capabilities.
I see.
Yes. So I don't know if Yvonne has got anything. She has been quite quiet before I go.
No, all I have is saying thank you for teaching. Also, thank you for explaining about the certification. I'm sure we have all gotten good insights that will prepare us when we do it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Levi and Yvonne. And Ruth also, thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Good.
Thank you too. Hope anywhere where you will meet any challenge, you'll just consult me. I'll be ready to help.
Yeah.
And I encourage you, because you are in a tech field, everybody to install the ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you install it, even some question, I'll be safe from some questions. You'll just be going there and get answers.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
that's good.
Yes.
Levi.
Yeah, I'll be safe from some questions. You just be going there and even get more advanced answers than the one which I could have offered.
I get you.
Yes. So thank you very much. You just have a nice evening.
You too.
Thank you. Have a good day as well.
Okay, thank you too.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Mhm.